department at Dell. He's the global team responsible for Dell's producer responsibility strategy, governance of electronic recycling policies worldwide, and advancing the Design for Environment program to increase sustainable product and packaging leadership across its entire portfolio. Within Dell also includes engagement with leading partners to help influence global environmental policies and standards, as developing new product environmental technologies and strategies such as closed-loop recycling programs. Also one of the primary contributors to the Dell 2020 Legacy of Good plan and regularly engages with customers on the sustainability value proposition of information communications technology. I'd also like to mention that Dell was one of our Circulars 2015 winners and has been a great part of our Circulars program. I'd also like to quickly introduce David Rosenberg. So David is one of the YGL Circular Economy Task Force co-chairs. He will be hosting this session, and as I said, he'll be leading the Q&A. Dave, would you like to add anything?
Just briefly, circulars that open up for people to apply to, for companies to apply to, visit thecirculars.org. And this is, for those who don't know, an award program launched last year in Davos, tremendous success as a way of highlighting companies, individuals that are leading in a circular economy in the spirit of inspiring others to follow suit, to lead the way in a circular economy. Please check it out. Again, the URL is thecirculars.org, and encourage, either apply yourself or encourage those you think are worthy. So that said, look forward to seeing a lot of you in Geneva next week. And moving to the main show, Scott O'Connell. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today. Reminder everyone to, any questions you have, please send them over, text them over in the chat function, and we'll aggregate and we'll follow the presentation with the Q&A at the end. So please take it away.
Thanks, David, and thanks to you and Wesley for that warm introduction. And I should kick off by saying we were certainly honored to win the Circulars Award in Davos earlier this year, and look forward to returning that beautiful trophy back to Davos in January to the next winner. So as David said, I encourage folks to take a look at the award and apply as appropriate. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Scott O'Connell. I lead our Dell's Global Producer Responsibility organization, and I first off want to thank Accenture and the Forum of Young Global Leaders for the opportunity today to share some of our perspectives on circular economy, and also look forward to hearing from all of you on the webinar during the Q&A session. I think we certainly, this is a collaborative opportunity, and love to hear from others on ideas they may have to enable transition towards a circular economy. So I'll kick off with a few words on our perspectives. I'll walk through a couple of examples of some circular economy programs that we have implemented at Dell, as well as things that we look forward to in the future, with an eye towards common theme of how technology can help drive and enable a circular economy. So start here with a little bit of an overview. I'm assuming that most folks are familiar with Dell, but let me start off just with a brief overview of the company. I think many of you probably are aware that the company was founded by Michael Dell in 1984, based on a $1,000 loan from his parents here down the street at the University of Texas at Austin. And since then, in the 31 years since, we've grown into one of the largest IT companies in this space. 2 years ago, we became a private company, and so internally we affectionately are known as the world's largest startup. So now, as a private company, kind of gives us the opportunity to look at things from a longer view lens, and I think sustainability certainly fits well into that. And as you can see on the chart here, really, we view us as playing a critical role in transforming the technology industry and making advanced technology more accessible and affordable to our customers around the world. And we define this journey to create more and more value over time, as well as driving capabilities up while ideally driving down cost and complexity. And so we kind of refer to this as the power to do more. For those of you that are familiar with products and solutions, we have products across the whole spectrum, from tablets and PCs and displays all the way up to storage and networking products that you find in some of the world's largest data centers. So one of the true end-to-end portfolio companies within the ICT industry. So a little bit of background there on the company. Shifting gears a bit here towards, I think what we're all here to talk about is, kind of the trends that we see globally and how these trends may shape this transition towards the circular economy. And I think, as we all know, from a demographic standpoint, we're expecting, to add another billion people to the planet in the next 15 years, and another 15 years later, some estimates estimating that we'd have around 9.7 billion people on the planet by 2050. So obviously, that combined with increasing 3 billion around the world that are joining the ranks of the middle class, that are also adopting lifestyles and purchasing habits that drive greater consumption. This combination certainly has certainly some environmental implications, but also economic and social implications as well. And so I think that's one of the key trends that we all keep in mind. For those of us that work in the space, is really we've got to do things differently to address these trends. The other thing that's worth noting that I think most kind of are aware that's happening in the background is this chart illustrates the growth trend of commodity prices and GDP going back to 1975. And so you can see really what's happened pretty recently is, for the first time, the increase in the price of commodities is growing faster than the GDP. And so you think about, this essentially means it's getting harder and harder and increasingly expensive for us to access raw materials that go into the products and services that we use. And copper is a good example. If you look at in the early 1900s, if you mined a ton of copper ore, you'd get about a 7% yield of copper from that ore. And today, about 0.6%. So we're having to work increasingly harder to access materials, and the cost, along with economic and environmental impact, is growing. And so really a focus here on materials and how do we use material more efficiently and wisely across the cycle. And I think this is a bit of some of you may kind of chuckle at this sort of cartoonish diagram of the difference between a linear and circular economy. I think many of you on the phone are very familiar with the differences between these two, and I think why we're here today is to talk about how can we move things towards the model on the right and change the system and find ways to keep resources in circulation longer and reducing that dependency from the kind of the one-way conveyor belt of take, make, and waste that you see in the linear economy. And I'll talk to a few examples of how Dell is approaching this circular economy with some of our products and solutions. And so, not to leave it on a dire note, I think obviously we all recognize there's enormous upside to the circular economy, and so the estimates from Ellen MacArthur around $1 billion in value and generating up to 400,000 new jobs in Europe alone. So for those of you in Europe, that's certainly good news for you, but I think the trend would also apply globally. And so I think that all of us that work in this space feel encouraged and inspired by that upside, and I think we do have a lot of opportunities in front of us to take advantage of the economic and social gains. So with that, let me switch gears a bit and talk about what we're doing with them and how we think about circular economy at Dell. And I realize this is a bit of a busy chart on the right, but really and we don't worry, we won't go through all of these, but we view this from a systems view of how, as I mentioned earlier, can technology enable and drive a circular economy. And I'll speak to a few examples of those in the coming slides and talk about how we are embracing the circular economy and how different technology solutions will fit into that overall picture. And I think that you'll hear a few examples that are materials around materials efficiency, but also technologies like Internet of Things and big data that can enable and help drive the circular economy, and always looking for opportunities to innovate and collaborate to maximize these resources. So I'll start by talking about a couple of our sustainable sourcing programs, and this is really, I think, as many of us on this webinar are aware, this is really one of the critical pieces of the circular economy to make sure that we're taking care of the resources that we have, and that we are, where possible, minimizing the use of natural resources, and then also using materials that already exist in the economy and putting those back into reuse or recycle streams. And so we have had a long history of sustainable sourcing and packaging, as well as in our products, and I'd like to highlight two of those programs today. One of those is what we've done with wheat straw packaging, and this is really a great innovation story where we partnered with a company in China called YGL Jupiter, who came to us and through our innovation pipeline of packaging and said, we may have a solution where we can tap into agricultural waste in China that may be able to be used as a replacement for corrugated cardboard and packaging materials. And so we looked at this and obviously worked closely with the supplier. This actual solution is from wheat harvests in China, where farmers would harvest the wheat, and the wheat straw would essentially become a waste product that they would traditionally burn, which obviously creates also an air pollution issue after the harvest. And so we worked with them to figure out a way to take the wheat straw and through a process be able to convert that into wheat straw packaging for our products. And we use this, if many of you have received anything in the mail or a product recently that came in a box, that's where we use this in our products, is really that sort of wavy part that's between the two surfaces of the cardboard, and it's a blend of 30% wheat straw and 70% recycled corrugate. And we also use it in some pulp cushions that we use in some of our notebook and tablet products. And the process itself, as you see here, uses 40% less energy and 90% less water than traditional manufacturing of virgin corrugate cardboard. So really a great solution and innovation that came to us, and we worked with the supplier very closely to go develop technically feasible and scalable solution for use in our packaging. And I'd add that doing this at cost parity and in some cases lower cost as we've scaled this has made this a win-win-win for us and for the environment. So that's one of the examples that I wanted to highlight today on our packaging materials. The second one that I'd like to highlight is what we've done with closed-loop plastics in the supply chain. And so think about more on the kind of the hardware side is our customers really value convenient reuse and recycling options for their old electronics. And I think we're all aware that small devices are getting smaller and smaller. Life cycles in some spaces are getting shorter, which means that customers are increasingly wanting to know, what do I do with my old device? And there are a number of certainly reuse markets out there, refurbishment markets, but ultimately, ideally a product goes through 2 or 3 life cycles, but ultimately there will be, a time that product would need to enter the recycling stream, and we offer free consumer recycling around the world in over 70 countries today, and we do that really with any brand. So it's not only Dell equipment, but any brand of used electronics that a customer may have can access and take advantage of our free consumer recycling program. And a few years ago, we sort of stepped back and looked at those recycling programs and looked at the reverse logistics supply chain and identified opportunities to recover materials from recycling streams and actually put them back into new Dell products. And so where we've started with this is with plastics. And one of our supply chain partners called Wistron came to us. Wistron's interesting because they're one of the world's largest ODM manufacturers for the IT industry, but they also recently started up a recycling business. And so we started working with them to look at opportunities to really close the loop on plastics. And what you see here is essentially, and this is a view of how this works here in the U.S., is we have a partnership with Goodwill that's been going on for now 10 years where, a consumer can drop off any brand of used electronics. Goodwill will, first choice would be to refurbish and resell if possible. If the assets are old enough, they can't be resold, they go into the recycling process where the plastics are then diverted to the closed loop operation where they're sorted, segregated, and then converted into new parts to make new Dell products. And so we launched this program last year with our OptiPlus 3030 All-in-One in last June, and since then we've shipped over 3 million pounds of recycled plastics into new Dell PCs and displays in the last year. And I should mention the process has a lower carbon footprint than virgin plastics, and we've avoided, with that 3 million pounds, we've avoided about 230,000 kilograms of CO2 since we've launched this program. And the program itself, we also worked with UL Environment to get a third-party verification of the process from end to end to really certify that plastics coming into the process are from used electronics and those that are coming back in. So it is a true end-to-end closed loop program. Had UL Environment work with us to develop a standard as well as a validation protocol around that. So the program itself really promotes collection, with our customers. That puts those materials back in from end of life electronics back into use, and has also created jobs both with Goodwill as well as with working with our recycling partners on this. And we see this as really the beginning of what we could do with closing the loop on other types of materials, both from used electronics as well as even looking at waste from other industries and recycling back into new electronics. And similar to the wheat straw packaging, we've been able to scale this and achieve cost parity or lower. So really, and again, a win for our customers, good for the environment, and ultimately really good for business as well. So there's also a video here. I think we were going to share that link in the chatter for folks to take a look at your leader. So that link is there, though. I think the slides will be shared with this group as well, so you can take a look at that video. And then we also have a closed loop recycling website where you can go get a good bit more detail on what we've done with this program and where we're headed. So we're really proud of this program and look forward to building on to it in the future. So switching gears a little bit from materials into extending product life, which we do as another component circular economy. And this starts with our customers and making sure that we have service and repair options available to extend, ideally extend the life of their hardware. And also we have a Dell outlet store where customers can go purchase certified refurbished Dell products that have the same as new limited hardware warranty as a new Dell product. And so kind of offering service as well as refurbish offerings to extend the product life cycle in the first place. And then from a design perspective is designing the products so they can be reused and recycled. And this includes things like making the battery accessible so it can be replaced, minimizing the use of glues and adhesives to make sure that when the products do reach end of life and reach a recycler, they can be easily assembled and recycled to get to those valuable components and materials easily and more economically to make sure that we can put them back into the recycle stream. And so there's both extended via service and repair and refurbishment, but also extending the components and materials through design for reuse and recycling that we integrate at the front end of the development process of all Dell products. And we've recently won the ISRI Design for Recycling award in 2014 for the design aspects that we've put into our Latitude notebook product. So we're happy about that, and I think that's another area of collaboration within industries is how do we build in circularity up front in the design of products to be able to extend that product life. I mentioned earlier about our consumer and take-back programs in over 70 countries. We also have commercial asset recovery programs in over 40 countries for our commercial customers. And if you look at a whole, we have a goal within Dell by 2020 to recover over 2 billion pounds of used electronics, and we're well on our way to meeting that goal. But there's always more that we can do. And if you look at and we view that our free consumer take back program that is available to take back and recover and any brand is really industry leading. And so, but I think we always look at where can we do better. And if you look at our sector, the technology sector as a whole, globally, the average that we're achieving right now is about 15% of the products are actually being recovered and recycled. Certainly in some parts of the world, especially in developed countries, that percentage is much higher because you have regulations in place that drive greater recycling targets and recovery targets of electronics. And some of the developing countries, those regulations and standards are just now emerging, and so you may find a lower percent. But kind of keeping that in context, that well, if only 15% on average are coming back, what can we do, as businesses and consumers and policymakers to help drive that percent higher and make it, ideally easy and cost-effective to recycle products, and coupling that with, we see closed-loop recycling becoming more technically feasible and economical. That increase of, recovery of products will also, become a feedstock, if you will, into increasing the volume of closed-loop recycling and create even more incentive for recycling of products. And certainly technology will play a key role in making, consumers aware of, which recycling options they may have that are near to them and convenient for them, as well as actual recycling technology. I mentioned Wistron earlier. They were key in developing the technology to actually sort and segregate the plastics into a stream that would meet Dell specifications for all of our new products. And so we have to be cognizant that the materials we put in the products have to be equivalent or better to the virgin materials that we've been using historically. So that comes with some technology solutions that have to be put in place to enable that. And we feel confident that we'll see even more innovation and investment in that space in the future. So switching gears a little bit from materials and product extension and looking kind of at the products themselves into delivery of technology is certainly another key part of the circular economy, and how do we look at systems and the technology and information technology from that systems view to grow and create value across leadership of devices and across the services that we offer via things like data center as a service and desktop virtualization. And cloud solutions is one of those areas where customers, our customers have an opportunity to provision and scale various types of technology for the type of work and demands that they have when it's needed, and then when they don't have those demands at peak times, they can roll that back to reduce that technology and reduce energy consumption in that case. And so it really is, how do we scale the technology to meet the need? And in some cases that does mean reducing the amount of hardware that a customer may need. They can take advantage of those solutions through the cloud, or also through using products like thin clients that are very efficient and very easy to upgrade and expand, and also flexible with reducing the need of significant capital expenses for hardware investment, and really placing more value around the data in the cloud. So that's another area we see that they can help enable circular economy. And the other ones, I think a lot of us are hearing a lot about Internet of Things these days in commercials and in the industry forums. And it's really one of those that we see as being very important. I think I heard someone internally say that there's as many different definitions of Internet of Things as there is definition of sustainability, and I think that all of us that we're in the sustainability space can probably appreciate that, and so it is very much on the forefront and cutting edge. And when we think about Internet of Things and how it enable more sustainable outcomes, you think about things like using environmental sensors to not only generate data, but also really the analytics around how do you filter it, deliver it, and make it accessible, be able to use that data in a meaningful way to maybe enable a more sustainable outcome. And so that's another area where the benefits of those tools will become very important going forward, of identifying inefficiencies that may be in the built environment, and how can we knowing and understanding those inefficiencies, how can we then take actions to go drive more sustainable outcomes? And certainly the use of those sensors and the data they generate is important, and gives us those analytics to be able to then take actions. And I'll kind of close here with a recent example that we have in working with and how the Internet of Things may enable more sustainable outcomes both for our customers and for the planet and this is certainly relevant for us that live here in Texas as well. We see a lot of these guys rolling around. Usually they have longhorns, though they're not this particular type of cow, but we've worked very closely with a dairy farm in India called YGL, and this is really a story of how they're using big data and Internet of Things to help their business grow, as well as achieve some of their own sustainability aspirations. And so the company in India, Chitale, is a dairy farmer farming industry, and they came to us saying, hey, we have and if those of you that are familiar with the India production, is actually that despite they have a very large percent and do contribute a large percent to the world's milk supply, in some areas the actual yield per animal is lower than that of other countries. And so Chitale really wanted to figure out ways to increase that yield by using information, and that's where you see the Meet the Connected cow. And so we worked with them to improve the yield per animal by monitoring the feeding and the breeding through the RFID sensors, and monitoring the tags and collecting the data was step one, right, of using RFID to capture data, and then based capturing that data, analyzing it to produce the outcomes. And so in this case, they had about 6,000 head of cow where they were tracking the data and making that information available to farmers via mobile devices that help those farmers then make better decisions on caring for those cows that led to increased milk yield. And we have a case study on this available as well, that if folks that would like to learn more about that, we can certainly provide that. So it's just an interesting and kind of a fun story of how technology and agriculture can work hand in hand. So with that, I'll close, and I know we probably have some questions that have come in. I'll just close here by, again, thanking everybody for their time. Feel free to visit us online. You see the links here for ways that you can find out more about our approach to circular economy, our Legacy of Good plan that we recently updated our annual report there, so you can find the latest and greatest there. And I hope that through this time I've been able to share some of our perspectives on circular economy, as well as some of the examples that we see will help move us towards the circular economy. And I think that, as mentioned at the top, I think working with groups like YGL and Accenture and others, there really is a great opportunity for collaboration and learning through each other, because I think there's certainly a lot of opportunity and innovation in the space. So I thank you for your time, and we'll turn it over for a Q&A session.
me? Hello? Scott?
David? Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Scott, thank you so much. This is fantastic. And it certainly makes me feel like we chose the right winner forward last year in Davos for the multinational leader. You guys really embody much of what it means to be a leader in circular economy, from looking at looking at business holistically in terms of design, materials. You spoke about life cycle, recyclability, and working throughout the value chain from vendors, distributors, products. So really touched on a lot of different things, and that was fantastic. Congratulations again for the 2015 award.
I appreciate it. Yep.
From a high level, where does your role in a big multinational, where do you sit? Meaning, is this considered a profit center, a cost center? What part of the organization do you sit into? Does you have an idea, and does that make sense to you, or what do you think is appropriate?
That's a great question. Our organization, the team that I lead, actually sits in our global operations and solutions organization. So we're part of the organization that develops Dell products as well as manages the Dell supply chain. So there are other functions within the company that manage, supply chain SCR activities within our procurement organization. We also have a sustainability team that does a lot of our outreach and reporting around sustainability. So there are several functions with Dell that work on sustainability. We all collaborate very closely together to kind of understand. And as I mentioned earlier, our 2020 Legacy of Good plan is really a great framework for us to have a longer-term vision of sustainability and working together as an organization to achieve those 21 ambitious goals that we've set. And so, I'd say, your question about where could it sit, there are other companies in our industry where these functions may sit in different parts of the organization. I think in our case, and certainly I'm a little bit biased here, but I think that the closer you are to the business operations, the more opportunity you can find. I think that, by being part of the operations and product development organization, we can sit side by side with our engineering teams, our supply chain managers, our folks that are really understanding our life cycle end-to-end, the teams that manage our service offerings for our customers as well. So it gives us a nice vantage point to be able to look at stability across the entire life cycle. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, and part of the spirit of these, if you will, is to inform others that are analyzing these same issues. And it's not clear. This is a growing area of focus in organizations. And it's good to go a little deeper here. I mean, part of this is, I think, is this viewed as an opportunity to affect not just the bottom line, but top line. So we've had another guest talking about products as a service. So here in this case, it could be, instead of selling a computer, leasing a computer to ensure that connection with the customer, or making sure you get the materials back from an e-waste standpoint. Are organizations like Dell, are you guys thinking in terms of the top line when you think of circular economy?
Absolutely, and I think that we see increasingly both our consumer and commercial customers. In commercial in particular, you see, in our case, in our industry, you see a lot of federal and government purchasing that are being driven more and more by different green procurement standards, where companies in this space do compete very aggressively on achieving and sometimes exceeding those standards, because we have our customers that are asking for those features. We see it in bids and tenders is what we see. That trend has been increasing over time as well. And then I think if you think about consumers, finding the the most effective and meaningful ways to actually reach them with some of this information is a bit of a challenge when you think about, individual consumers and point of sale. But I think that certainly recycling, as I mentioned, the partnership with Goodwill, we have done a lot to make our customers aware of that partnership, and that, hey, if you've got, you've got old clothing or furniture, whatever you might have that you might be taking to a Goodwill on that day, don't forget, if you have an old laptop or desktop that you have, you can take it there and they will, manage it responsibly. And in some cases now that, as I talked about, some of those materials are coming back into new products, and certainly customers are interested in understanding where their stuff goes and seeing that now there are companies like Dell that are out there that can demonstrate that we have the ability to take those products from them and actually put them back into service, into new products. So I think that does help drive a bit of top line advantage for us in demonstrating our leadership in that space and it resonating with our customers.
And Scott, you spoke a few times on procurement. Is there general guidelines, and this gets particularly hard with a multinational, but are there general guidelines as to when they purchasing decisions where one question is, are the trade-offs in being better stewards for the environment so that the cost element to increases the purchasing decision? And if so, what are the guidelines do you give your purchasing managers on what those trade-offs are allowed to be and when to go faster, when you to get up the game?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we are, we're driven first and foremost by our customers. And so if you look at, use one example, you look at programs like the Energy Star program here in the U.S. that has become, recognized in many countries around the world, and, going on. I think Energy Star now for our space is going on its 25th year, is really one of the first procurement standards out there, if you will, that our customers really look to as a standard that they adopted and that they wanted their IT suppliers to follow. And so that's one very focused on energy efficiency of products. But in that case, for us, we translate our customer requirements and those standards that they adopt into our own supply chain, our own product designs. And so it's a bit role of the team that I lead is taking those external drivers from our customers and translating them back into our product roadmaps. And in some cases, as you mentioned, there may be costs involved, but we found that for features where our customers value, energy efficiency is a great one, because in that case, the more efficient that we can make a product or service, that's less energy that they're having to purchase or buy or plan for. And so in the cases, the investment really is, how do we deliver that to help our customers and do it ideally for us at the lowest cost. And with larger companies, certainly scale is important there. We shouldn't lose sight of that. I think as you begin to scale, you may see costs in some places that as you scale and grow that over time may become negligible or even a cost advantage over time. So we constantly balance that. And again, the market signal is really the starting place, and then how do we internalize that with our development and our Dell procurement teams to be able to deliver on those, and then also look for opportunities where there's something we could do that would advantage us even over and above what we may see happening with our competitors. And I think straw packaging and closed loop plastics are some of those where we're going above and beyond those standards that exist today. And actually, in some cases, we may be thinking about, well, how do we add those if they're feasible solutions and they're available on the market? How do we embed some of those types of things into future standards, so we kind of raise the whole industry along the way, which is it's an interesting opportunity to work with standards groups as well as across the table from competitors in that space. But there is some competition that happens and probably needs to happen if we are wanting to really move the needle to a circular economy. And I think standards and policies certainly have a key role to play there.
So let's talk about that further. And this is a focus of the World Economic Forum. A greater focus is public-private partnerships. So what are the features that get this movement to a circular economy going faster? So is part of the answer public partners and raising standards, or are there other bottlenecks that really need to be done, and what accelerates this movement?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that certainly public procurement standards and I'm speaking for the IT industry, those certainly can have the ability to really move the needle there, because those are things that, for those of us that are especially in the commercial markets, they can really have significant buying power behind them if we're able to move those forward. And that's a collaboration between policymakers, between industry leaders, between customers as well in that equation. I think so. There's opportunities there. In consumer, I think you certainly see some of the larger retailers are moving forward with their own sustainability purchasing criteria and indices. I think that's a positive driver in the consumer product space, where the retailers are using again their purchasing power to set standards for different product categories. I think third I would mention is into those sort of market drivers is opportunities to increase collaboration between industries on circular economy, and I think that's maybe that's a little bit, sometimes maybe that's a little bit harder to get started, because you're then it's asking different industries and different companies, for example, to get together on a common platform. But I think there may be opportunities both from technology enablement, but also even, as I mentioned earlier, even looking at from a material standpoint of, are there materials that, may be a waste to one industry that may be a great material set for another industry, and then after that industry uses the material, is there another a cog in that supply chain that could use those materials? And so looking at that, I think, is another way that could help integrate that, and getting like-minded companies together to do that. I think that's certainly something that we would be interested in helping to participate in.
So with that in mind, when you think of what this movement accelerated, are the problems technology problems? Are they behavioral problems? How do you find them? In the same sense, I mean, are you optimistic about the future? Optimistic about the future?
That's a good question. I think some of them. I do think some of it's is as you mentioned, behavioral. I think is what can we do to increase awareness and knowledge of some of the, as I mentioned at the top, right, just some of the demographic drivers that we see coming, and how do we communicate that effectively, with other stakeholders of hey, we have some drivers here that we need to get in front of and address. And I think that so there is a bit of work to be done there, I think, in increasing communication and awareness on the front. I think there are, certainly technology actually will be an enabler in this space. I think if you look at, data and Internet of Things, and I think that technology can certainly help be enabler if applied appropriately. So just setting up monitors and collecting data without any analysis probably isn't gonna enable a lot. So that's where I think the solutions there would be, how can you analyze and synthesize in that data and make it more meaningful? So there's opportunity there. I think when you look at the recycling, I think that there are some technology solutions that have developed or that are developing in our industry that will help us be able to get closer to more closed loop systems based on taking kind of some of the recycling technology that may be used in the past. Are there other techniques that could be used to actually recover material at a higher yield and at a higher purity, if you will, to be able to put them back into circulation versus downcycling them into other low grade type of products. So it's I think a combination of both. I don't think there's one. I wish I had a simple answer there. To answer your other question, I'm definitely optimistic about it. I think that technology, in particular in our industry, I think has a key role to play, and I think we want to be at the forefront of that discussion.
So in so much as part of the behavioral, what does it mean if all of a sudden, in the spirit of public-private partnership, if the public sector, if policy leaders say waste is illegal, and there are huge fines if we see any e-waste and we down and it's from your manufacturing facility, what does that what does that do to the industry? And if, like, by 2020 or whatever the time is, there cannot be any e-waste. What happens then? What does the future look like?
In fact, there are today there are many governments that have actually put electronics recycling regulations and laws into place. You certainly that started. For those of you familiar with it, started in Europe with what's called the WE directive, the WEEE directive going back to 2005. And so, Europe, if you look at what's happened there, going back now 10 years to establishing regulation that states that, products shouldn't be going to landfill, they should be recovered and recycled at various targets. That regulation that stood in Europe 10 years ago has now, you see that in any of the U.S. states, you see it in China, you see it in India. So a lot of governments have taken those measures. And we continue to work with those governments on what does the future of those regulations look like. And now looking at it, I think for us, we may have looked at that 10 years ago of just what's a meaningful target, a recycling target that without the eye towards, okay, I'm recycling 30% of what I put on from the market. I think now you're seeing more discussion of what happens to that 30% or 50% or whatever that percent might be. And I think that's where looking at it from that sort of economy lens will be helpful, because I think in some ways it's just thought of, well, recycling's enough. As long as you're doing the collection part of it, the rest sort of will follow. I think that, there's more to be done there of, well, what happens after, products are collected, where to go, how are they treated, where can we recover material value from those. I think one thing to note there is, there needs to be some allowance for the free movement of goods across borders in that case, right? So just banning, being a landfill ban on electronics doesn't necessarily address the solution, because it's a global, as we all know, it's a global economy. And if you really want to get materials from recycled products back into new products, those materials need to move across borders. So as those policies develop, we need to make sure that those policies don't hinder that ability to move them to where they need to be to put them back into use. If it's overly restrictive, then the materials may sit idle, or they may end up going to a landfill or to incineration, where they could have been maybe reused in a different geography. So the policies have developed. They continue to evolve. The regulations in our space certainly change pretty frequently. It's a good bit of what my team does is look after that landscape, and the recycling industry is changing as well. So there's dynamics at play there for us and other companies in our space to certainly engage and be aware of those trends and make sure that we're trying to move things in the right direction.
With that same spirit, it's like one that we see that's unfortunate again and again, and by the we, it's like just people think about circular economy. It's how often industries don't, or within an industry, there's little collaboration, meaning the competitor set doesn't seem to collaborate as often as they could to achieve the economies of scale. And especially in something like the computer industry, where the complexities involved around materials or closing the loop is significantly higher than like plastic bottles or glass bottles, or just something that has inputs. do you see your industry, your competitive set collaborating, or are you trying to solve these issues in a vacuum or maybe with people industries to get the economies of scale?
It's a great question. I actually think it's both. I think we've I think with closed loop recycling, as I mentioned, our program is brand agnostic, meaning, our consumer recycling program will take back any brand of used electronics. And so if you think about that for a minute, right, the products that we collect and bring back into the recycling stream, the plastics from those electronics are from different brands. And so what we've done is actually take that value and put it back into new products. And I think that there will be opportunities to work as more of an industry on how do we scale that. I mean, we certainly have scaled that in our own chain, and I think there will be opportunities to grow that. It's that balance of the collection. Collection design has a place to play there, as well as the recycling infrastructure. If you could get to the point where you're seeing similar practices on design for recycling and reuse across the industry, we hear that a lot from our environmental partners and recyclers that we partner with as well. If you guys all made, if you all made products that were easy to disassemble and take apart, then it would make the recycling process that much more efficient and less labor intensive. So I think there are collaboration opportunities within our industry on both talking about best practices from a design standpoint, as well as can we work together to recover and recycle value back. And I think that of the green procurement standards that I mentioned earlier, like Energy Star or like EPEAT, another one here in the U.S., where you do see that collaboration happening today, where standards could be the opportunity to go reach some common guidelines on how to make those happen and make them happen across the industry and move things a bit faster. I think that we're part of developing solutions we've developed, but I think at some point you do start looking at where can we as an industry really work together, and that's in our industry. Other industries, I think that there are some opportunities there. I think it's a little more challenging there because you're talking about different industries, different products and solutions. But I do think that's kind of the next way of collaboration. I think will be between industries to work together on that.
Excellent. I certainly hope that's a trend that continues. And we're getting to the top of the hour, but how important is the movement in an organization being pushed at the very top? So it was wonderful to see Michael Dell personally accept the Circular's Award at Davos, and that really spoke to how this is a top-down leadership piece and that needs to be present. So to put a spotlight of the how this is prioritized within an organization. But to you, how important is that?
Thrilled that Michael was able to come to Davos to receive the award. I mean, that speaks to, I think, our commitment from our leaders and our executives on what we're doing around circular economy. And I think that's helped create the awards and some of the additional recognition around that has really kind of led to greater conversations internally. Our employees now, it's interesting as we kind of I had the opportunity myself to kind of go show off the award when Michael got back, and and it was able to spur more conversations internally with all of our employees. And now it's interesting to see that employees are coming up with their own ideas of how to enable circular thinking and work within the work that they do. So it has kind of been a launch pad, if you will, to getting more internal employee engagement on the topic. And I think that that top level support is certainly the visibility and the support behind that has helped us really move this forward. And I think we want to keep building on that momentum going forward. So the award was certainly a great catalyst for that within the company.
One, it's great to hear, and that's really what it was meant to do, is not just to inspire others, but to make people proud of what they've achieved. So we're happy we were able to contribute in that way. And I haven't seen the video on how the actual physical award was modeled, designed, manufactured. It's worth seeing. Scott, for yourself and for everybody, it's on the Circular's website. It's really a beautiful actual physical award.
Great.
Scott,
I'll
thank you.
take a look at that.
And for everybody, this is just a note to end on because it really speaks to how this movement really needs to be captured at the highest level, at the leadership level, and throughout the organization. So these are good lessons to internalize and apply within our own organizations. Scott, thank you so much for sharing today. This was really very valuable, and we really appreciate the time and the sharing.
Great for inviting us, and thanks for your time, and have a great rest of the week.
All right, excellent. Keep doing what you're doing and keep leading. Great. Everybody else, go to circulars.org and look forward to seeing a lot of you next week in Geneva. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.